Okay, so I intend this to be quite a philosophical video, but I'll try not to make it too lengthy. I want to talk about opinions. Opinions. Um, this video can sort of be seen as a bit of an umbrella video for probably most of my channel. I've made about 1,200 videos, which I would say is well above average. I've looked at a lot of other channels, and although there's many other YouTubers who have a lot more views than me and a lot more subscribers, I have a lot of videos, I have a lot of uploads. And if I'm being very candid about it, perhaps 70% of those are based on me articulating my views, my opinions. The remainder are either light-hearted or just discussing factual things. For example, a prime ministerial series isn't opinions, it's mostly factual. There's a few other ones where I'm just discussing particular facts, but I'm upfront about the fact that the majority of my videos are based on pure opinions, my own opinions. Um, and when I justify my opinions, I obviously try to use facts to do that. But I think this is a good subject to focus on here. Um, about 10 years ago, when I was at university, a Norwegian friend of mine made an analogy, and I've never forgotten what he said. Well, we were having a really philosophical, in-depth conversation over beers, and believe it or not, alcohol and philosophy can be quite a creative way to think about things. It's a bit like they say, the best writing is done when writers are on drugs, something like that. But anyway, he said that every human being on this planet goes into the world naked. Now, what he meant by that, or what I think he meant, was that as babies, we don't really have opinions. As toddlers, we don't have opinions. Opinions are something that we articulate over time. Now, what I want to discuss a little bit is how we reach opinions. And opinions can vary very, very widely in terms of significance. For example, it could be an opinion on what is your favorite type of beverage. It could be an opinion on what sort of film you like, which are relatively trivial things because they're not things that are really about life and death or that really impact life. However, they are important in terms of popular culture, in terms of cultural aspects. But then there's opinions on heavy political issues, on religion, on taboo subjects. And those sort of opinions really bring about sometimes tensions between human beings. You know, the old expression words cannot hurt is very naive because words have literally started wars. As as human beings evolved over millennia, if you're a creationist, you obviously won't believe that, but as human beings evolved over millennia, we articulated speech. We articulated communication. Obviously, some languages are a lot bigger than others. English, Spanish, Chinese, Hindi are the biggest languages, but every language has been articulated from the basic primeval instinct of human communication. Now, I could make a really politically incorrect video and I could guarantee that it would insult many people. I could say, this is just an example, I could say, I hate Group A for some reason. I'm not going to do that because but I'm only saying that to make a point that words do have impact. And hold debate around Donald Trump as an example of that. But I don't want to give Trump too much importance. I don't want to make every single video about him. But it's just an example. There's plenty of other well-known figures this can apply to. Um, I believe that how we reach our views on matters, you can take a wide range of issues, political issues. health, education, crime. In the case of the US, the gun debate. Different countries, certain issues may be more topical. Um, different countries may have certain issues that are particularly topical at a particular time. Um, and most people will have some opinions on it. There are people who really don't want to articulate a view, and you know what? I really respect those people. I don't believe that they're sitting on the fence or the card or something like that. I believe that they're simply decent people who want to avoid confrontation. Obviously, if you're a public figure, if you're a politician, you have to formulate a view on something. Um, and some people are naturally opinionated. I don't think opinionated necessarily equates to arrogance. I mean, I'm very opinionated, but that doesn't mean I bombastically say I am right. I'm just honest in that I do have opinions about a lot of things. And it's not that I enjoy confrontation because I really don't. It's that as I accumulate knowledge, there's a human emotional factor in that whereby I cannot help but link the knowledge I gain about something with the human experience. And sometimes that then ties into co- concepts of justice, of unfairness, um, of morality. If you're a thinking person, you cannot. I don't believe that if you're a thinking person, you can divorce knowledge with morality. You can accumulate knowledge on basic facts. Cairo is the capital of Egypt. Napoleon was a French emperor. Um, Tsar Nicholas II was assassinated, and so on. These are just basic facts. But then there is the human emotion that you can accumulate knowledge about a great injustice, whatever that may be, and you'd have to be robotic not to have feelings about that. So strong feelings are driven by people who have a sense of, most people formulate opinions and they base it on a sense of righteousness. I think there's very few people who have opinions and don't care about, like, kind of think that, oh, I'm wrong, but I don't care about it. Most people who have strong opinions genuinely believe that they're right about those opinions. And sometimes they don't care how they demonstrate that. If they're demonstrating it in an aggressive, thuggish way, they don't really care because they have convinced themselves that that view is right. And those who have a different point of view are wrong. And if that different point of view needs to be stood up to because that person is morally wrong and that person is against liberty or against justice, whatever. And it doesn't really matter what the issue is because this can be found in all sorts of different fields or matters. So opinions are very, very, very powerful. Most people have them. Now, to be fair, not everyone thinks that much about politics. I'm someone who happens to be interested in political matters. Most of my videos are geopolitical related or socio-political related. Um, some people make videos about, I don't know, makeup or technology or something like that. Most of my videos aren't about that. Um, but people who say, "Oh, I don't like confrontation. I don't like political confrontation," they would still be opinionated about, for example, some aspects of popular culture. They might, for example, be opinionated about their favorite writer or their favorite film director. Now, I'm someone who is very like I don't get really strong views on films or music. I just like what I like, and I don't get really worked up about someone else having a different point of view or saying that this film is not good or whatever. I really don't get that worked up about that. But I do have quite strong views about political matters. Why? Because I believe that has a direct impact on people's lives. So I think there's very, very, very few people can honestly say they don't have strong views about something. Because even if they don't have strong views about political issues, in most circumstances, they will have strong views about something else. whether it be films or literature or whatever. I really think there are very, very, very few people who are completely mellow about everything. If there are, I envy them because it would be a real luxury to go through life not being bothered by absolutely anything. I think it's very rare. Um, Sometimes I do think I overthink things. And this is the other thing about opinions. It is very, very easy to get into a situation where you overthink things, then you start really being concerned about what other people think of you. Now, if I said I was completely relaxed about how other people viewed me, I would honestly be lying. There have been times I overthink and I sort of consider, well, did I come across as too strong? Did I come across as too weak? I'd be lying if I said I haven't considered that. I mean, as I've got older, I have learned to be more relaxed with myself, but it's been a struggle at times. I consider myself above average in terms of intelligence, but I'm learning every day, and there's many, many, many things I don't know. Um, and I would say this: the most intelligent people in the world, even the most intelligent people in the world, don't know everything. Just don't. They may be have a very strong expertise in a given subject, or even if they're polymaths, they may have a strong expertise in a range of subjects. But even the world's most intelligent people simply don't know everything. And that will forever be a human shortcoming. And that's fine. That's good. Um, I've just watched Interview with a Vampire. Great film. Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Christian Slater. It's a very good film if you haven't seen it, from 1994. The only reason I'm mentioning that is, vampires. We think if you're a vampire, eternal life, you can accumulate endless knowledge and become a genius. But human beings have a lifespan, unless you believe in reincarnation. But even in that case, reincarnation still is another life. It's not the particular life that you're in. So, in this world, all we can do is accumulate knowledge and try to decide ourselves what we perceive to be right and wrong. I do believe that before we do anything in terms of anything influential, we need to really think about it. That's why, for example, I take voting very, very seriously. Before I vote for anyone, I will strongly consider that candidate and the party that they represent. Voting something I take very seriously, and I recommend everyone does. I'm not telling other people what to do, but it's not something that you could take lightly. Um, so yeah, I just think that opinions. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having opinions. It's a natural part of the human process, because you cannot be a thinking person and not have opinions about something. Now, some people are more opinionated than others. I am pretty opinionated, but I would like to think I'm not opinionated in a bombastic way. Um, I find I've been in many situations where people have disagreed with me, but we've been very civil about it. They've been civil to me, and I've been civil to them. Admittedly, there's also been the opposite situation where I've got into heated debates, and I'm trying to lessen that, certainly on cyberspace, because it gets you nowhere. You're not going to convince the other person of your view, and they're not going to convince you of their view if it just becomes a, as we would say in British English, slanging match, mudslinging, whatever way you want to describe it. That's just petty point scoring, and it isn't. You're not going to convince someone else of your point of view with that approach. Sometimes it's tempting. Again, it's the human nature side of things. If you feel you're being attacked, it's the human nature to want to defend yourself and give as good as you get. I mean, I am trying very hard to ignore trolls on my channel, and um, I don't mind people disagreeing with me, but I'm really going to try hard not to respond to comments on my channel that are basically intended to wind me up. Um, and occasionally I make videos that are blunt, and I say things that I know full well may offend some people, but I say those things not not try and stir up trouble, but because I think they need to be said. I honestly think they need to be said. And I've always said I don't believe in political correctness. But the caveat to that is I don't believe in, I say things need to be said. It doesn't mean that I want to start a cyber war. It just means that I think a certain subject needs to be discussed. And the best, I may be blunt about it, but I would hope that it would generate an adult debate. Um, Sometimes, admittedly, I'm not that diplomatic. Sometimes I use colourful language to describe what I believe is just an abomination. If I believe that something is just plain wrong, I'm going to use the sort of language I feel is. I mean, I'll give an example. The blasphemy laws in Pakistan. I believe that is a moral abomination. Now, I cannot use, overly polite language to describe that because there is no words that sum up how I feel about that is anything other than blunt. I can't just say, oh, these are very unpleasant laws, because to me that doesn't give the weight of how I feel about it. So, what I would say about opinions is sometimes you have to be blunt in order to underscore the way you feel about something. The only way is to be blunt. We can't be ultra polite and ultra sensitive all the time. Sometimes you just have to be blunt about things. I'm not saying all the time. There's other times when diplomacy is good and, trying to reach out is good. Anyway, that's a few thoughts I'd like to just put out there. Um, Opinions, I would say one last thing. I think it would be very refreshing if, as human beings, we can get to a point where we don't kind of narrow our circle based on someone's opinions about something. I would like to think I've got a wide range of friends. Now, I know I have friends in my life who would have opinions about certain things that I would strongly disagree with. And I would like to think if they knew my views on those things, for example, if they come across these videos, they wouldn't suddenly have a different view about me as a person. And I would like to think it doesn't change our relationship as friends. It would be quite sad, I think, if it did. So I think it is very possible to be close to someone and, you know, politics doesn't necessarily have to come into it. There are examples of people who have very happy relationships and they come from different walks of life or they come from different political backgrounds. In the film W, the Oliver Stone film, it shows when Laura Bush, I don't know if this is true, but it shows Laura Bush meeting George W at a barbecue. She says, I voted for Lyndon Johnson. So she was a Democrat. Obviously, he was a Republican, but that didn't stop them getting married and having presumably a happy relationship. Um, so I don't think the politics necessarily needs to divide people because you can still see someone's personality as a person. On the other hand, if politics is the way someone defines themselves, the way religion defines some people, the way they see religion as defining themselves, then it's unavoidable. But I know there are many people in my life who I've had heated arguments with, but we have actually ended up making peace, and I'm very pleased to say getting on well with each other. So that's refreshing. Anyway, I'm going to round this up. I didn't want to speak too long, but I think it is a very, very topical subject. Let me know your thoughts about opinions. I believe it's also fair to say that how we accumulate opinions, how we accumulate political views, is based on very often maybe family upbringing, community upbringing. The chances are if you grow up in Texas, you're going to have a slightly different influence in your life than if you grew up in Vermont or Sweden for that matter. That's just an example. If you grow up in a very conservative Pakistani village, you're going to have very different worldviews than someone who grows up in a Norwegian village, just as an example. Or perhaps a better example is Oslo, a Norwegian city. Um, if you grew up in certain parts of Asia, you're going to have a very different outlook than if you grew up in Canada, etc., etc. So, circumstance, and Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, recognised this in some of his approach to social cohesion, multiculturalism, and so on, which still remains a topic of heated debate. But what I would say is, I would agree with Tony Blair on that. Someone's background and circumstance does have an influence on their thinking. I think that's common sense. I mean, that's obvious. Um, so, the way I've grown up is a semi liberal background. Not ultra liberal, I'm not talking about tree hugging hippie liberal, but relatively liberal background. Um, within my family, we've had guests from all over the world. So I would say I've grown up in a relatively liberal background, but not ultra liberal, certainly not ultra left wing. I would say overall quite centrist. Um, but I have to appreciate that there are people who have grown up maybe with ultra conservative families or ultra left wing families. And it would be very difficult to expect those people to have a radically different mindset if that is what is influenced your life. Um, so circumstance and environment is definitely a big thing, I think. Anyway, there are a lot of things I can say with this subject. I'm going to close it here. I'm sure there's many, many other things I can say, and no doubt after I upload this video, I'll think, oh, I could have said that, I could have said this. It's always a thing with my videos. I always feel I could say more, but on the other hand, I tend to talk at length. So I'll round it up there. Experience matters. I mean, again, I'll just leave one last thought as an example. Someone who has experienced being harassed by gangs for a long time may well have formulated pretty conservative views on crime, as I have. Um, Someone who hasn't had that experience may have a different point of view. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts.